Welcome to Inside the Mind's Eye. Today our guest is Dr. Weston Robins. He was the owner and operator of Eternal Strength, a radical youth center for experiential therapy. The interesting thing about this conversation is, as Dr. West developed his program, mounting pressures of business, employee management, and the expansion of his own identity eventually caused panic attacks, resulting in the closure of Eternal Strength. Through the help of plant medicine and the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, Dr. West has begun to refocus his life. If you're into this type of material, please consider liking or subscribing. It really helps out the channel. And without further ado, I give us Inside the Mind's Eye with Dr. Weston Robins. The main theme that I'm the most curious about is hearing the story of the rise and fall of Eternal Strength.
It sounds like you make it sound like Rome.
I mean, it's like
in many ways it was for me, man. It was like, but yeah, I mean, I'll dive in. It was so beautiful, man, Adam. It was such a gift from the universe, God, consciousness, whatever you want to put a name to. But yeah, we opened it April 2020. So it was right at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I had been running private practice for 6 or 7 years. And I had 3 different offices, and my offices grew in size. And my last private practice office was like 1,500 square feet. And dude, I loved the work I was doing, but I made all this experiential room in there. I shoved a pool table in there and a flat screen TV and a dartboard and Nintendo Switch and all my guitars. But over that 6 years of private practice, I had so many clients, as young as 12, as old as 25, that had been through the mental health treatment system, and anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicidality, grief, adoption, all types of different challenges, mental health, dual diagnoses. But the theme was they were still struggling. And they've been to a lot of programs, quote unquote, IOPs, intensive outpatients, PHPs, partial hospitalization, psychiatric care stabilization facilities, wilderness therapy, residential treatment centers, therapeutic boarding schools. So I kept hearing these stories of kind of them going through this revolving door of the mental health treatment system. And the families were beautiful and were just talking to me about how they were struggling. And so I was like, you know what? I think I can build a really cool, funky space, music, arts, eclectic. So did that, opened the doors in 2020, and Adam, it felt like I blinked. It was a very weird time warp for me, where next thing I knew, years had gone by. Those first 2 years, of course, Zach Sweat came into town. He was living in Hawaii. We were best friends, man, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And then we got into a fight in 8th grade and stopped talking for 25 years. And that wasn't like, it's not like either one of us held this crazy grudge, but just life went on. And then we reconnected. He came into town. I said, hey, man, I've been running, I got my PhD, or I'm working on it. I'm an LPC. I've been doing all this work. You're doing coaching and diet and nutrition stuff, and he was doing a lot of mindfulness stuff. And so I was like, let's, I'm going to build this center, man. What do you think? You want to come along for the ride? And he was all about it. And we had a very brotherly relationship, and we kind of reconnected, and it made us both 13 years old again in a lot of ways. And so we but it was beautiful and it was great. And at one point we had to part ways. I haven't talked to him in probably, I want to say 3+ years. I think he's got a little baby. I wish him nothing but the best, man. And I hope he's doing awesome. But it was a lot for me, man. Running the center was a lot, and it became my everything, Adam. And we started with 4 people, and it grew to 17 at one point, and then it shrunk back down to 12. And I'm a good therapist, man. I'm grateful for that. I'm a good supervisor. I hate managing people. One of my favorite things in the world to do. And because I care, dude, like a little too much. So the playing all those roles became exhaustive. And at one point, man, just fast forward, it got to the last year and a half, 2 years of it. And my soul kind of started to just check out. And loved the families we were serving. But in terms of being able to manage interpersonal dynamics with staff, management, and then also the whole pressure of growing, scaling a business, P&Ls, cash flow. I had these incredible business mentors that, and so I locked in. I was like, okay, we're going to grow this. And we'll have 10 of them. And then I'll do an alternative wilderness program, and all these, my dreams kind of started to scale in this way. And when I knew it was really rocking me, man, and threw me off, was I started to have panic attacks and some anxiety attacks coming up to the center, and my nervous system was shot. This was about since December 2024. I had a couple therapists that left, and I wish them nothing but the best, but that kind of made me have to recollect and rebuild staff. We at one point we did become an IOP, intensive outpatient, started to work with insurance, and that just started to feel incongruent with the work I'd been doing, which was radical youth work. And so, man, I hit this point. It got really heavy for me. And from December 2024, like January, February, up until the summer of last year, 2025, I was barely holding on and just kind of going, I need to keep this going. I need to keep the center, because I never envisioned it not. It wasn't part of my narrative that I'd created for myself, was not having the youth center. And so I was gripping the wheel, man, and trying to push forward. And then I hit my breaking point last summer in a big way.
What happened? What happened for the breaking point?
I mean, man, so my nervous system, which, is a fancy word that a lot of people throw around right now. You hear it a lot. I would go up to the center, and I had decreased my workload, but what was very small engagements, whether it was like a meeting or a client or a new family, felt like this tremendous lift. And so I was very unable to kind of stay present. I felt like my mind was swirling. I couldn't stop my mind from thinking about the center, payroll, which was every 2 weeks. It was costing upwards of anywhere from 60 to 80 grand a month to keep the doors open, man. And we were making it, but some months would be barely. And then, the minute I'd get to breathe and be like, okay, we got enough, we just covered payroll, it'd be there again. And it was just trying to kind of ground. And so I felt myself really hit this place where I started to do a lot of virtual. I pulled back. I felt really safe at home for whatever reason. And I was able to kind of see clients virtually more. And I delegated a lot to staff. And I was like, maybe this will help. Maybe I just need to step back and not be in the day-to-day as much. But then there was this overarching, I couldn't turn my mind off, man. And I was constantly either thinking about the team, growth, financial, the modalities, our growth. And so in the summer, I hit this place where I knew something had to change. I went and saw a Buddhist monk at the Shaolin Temple here in Norcross. This amazing guy. He's in his 80s, Shifu Diru. He taught me some breath work, 3-6-9 breath. I started to do some Tai Chi, Qigong. I was taking a shit ton of Epsom salt baths. They were really helping, dude. I don't know why, but some days I'd take 3 or 4 a day, and it could calm my nervous system and bring me out of that sympathetic to parasympathetic. And then I was sitting there. My wife came on board. She became the CEO, and she was doing amazing. And Aaron Campbell was our director of operations, and they were pretty much running everything, man. And I was still struggling in a big way. And so I started to look at and evaluate the last couple of years of my life, and I just saw I completely become unbalanced. I wasn't caring for my own system. My mind was just swirling. And so somebody who helped me a tremendous amount was Eckhart Tolle. I remember being in my basement and not being able to stop my mind from just fixating on worry and fear. I remember my daughters were upstairs, my wife's upstairs, everybody's healthy and good. And here I've put out a little music album that I was so proud of. And I've written a book and got it published with Routledge Psychology. And everybody wants to work with me. And I have this thriving youth center. And dude, I'm miserable. I'm like super depressed, anxious, overwhelmed. And so I was like, man, I put on an Eckhart Tolle video called Dark Night of the Soul. And he started to talk about over-identification with anything, your ego identity. And it really helped me pull back and all of a sudden have this moment where I was like, oh my God, I've made my life eternal strength. I've made my entire identity this youth center and the journey of it. And I'm proud of that in certain ways, but in other ways, I've really done a disservice to my essence self. And so I started to reflect, was doing a lot of holistic work, but still struggling a lot. And back in 2016, when I had first started the PhD program that I did at the University of West Georgia, I had gone and worked with some plant medicine, ayahuasca, and never thought I was going to, but studied it quite a bit extensively, saw that it offered healing, or people were describing it as that, felt called at one point. So I went to one of the longest running centers in Iquitos, Peru, run by this beautiful guy, Don Howard. He's since passed away, but it was a family of curanderos or healers, Don Robert, Don Eliana, Don Carlos, and worked with ayahuasca, did an 8-day spirit quest is what they called it. And it was beautiful, man, life-changing. But I came away and I didn't work with any other plant medicines for the next 9 years. And I didn't feel cool. It was like I integrated a ton, but then that last summer, I started to think, man, and I was like, I'm really struggling. Do I go back to Peru? Do I work with plant medicine? And I started to do a lot of prayer, contemplation, meditation. And there's a beautiful woman that I've done some intuitive readings with. My wife trains with her. Her name's Risha Maxey, and she's an intuitive reader, psychic, healer. She's in her 70s. But she's the real deal. And I'm as skeptical as they come, dude. And I've done readings with her and she just knocks me on my ass and tells me things that are amazing. So I called her, did a reading. I said, look, I'm not feeling called to go to Peru and work with ayahuasca again. But I had a buddy of mine that went out to Arizona to something called the Church of the Peyote Way on 160 acres in the middle of Arizona and work with the grandfather medicine peyote. And I'm read about it extensively, and I'm kind of feeling called to go do that. They call it a 3-day spirit walk. And she said, yes. She was like, all your spirit guides are saying, yes, go. That's what you need to do. And so, dude, August last year, I hopped in the minivan and I drove 24 hours. I mean, I stopped. I took a break, stayed at a hotel, made it out to Arizona. And this is a beautiful facility run by Matt and Annie and a guy who's since passed away called Reverend Emmanuel Trulio. And they work with the sacred plant medicine peyote or mescalito. And you go to a small congregation house. You don't really speak to anybody. You're on your own. And you do a 24-hour fast. And then you go out to a campsite at 5 p.m. the next day, and you sit with the medicine overnight, yourself in the middle of the desert. And dude, it was profound, man. Like, revealed to me a lot of what I already knew, but in a very somatic, embodied way. Messages like, you have to close the center. It's okay. And dude, it was like, I'm, tears streaming down my face. You got to take care of yourself. be good to your body. And so it was profound, hard to put into words, but deeply grounding and deeply validating. And so did that in August, came back home, decided to close the center, closed it in September, went back out to Arizona again and did another spirit walk in November, 90 days apart from one another. That was deeply healing. And then came back home and have been really focused on taking care of myself, my family, staying present, doing a lot of Eckhart Tolle's work. I also study a book called A Course in Miracles that's been profound for me, and weaving that into kind of my self-care. And now I'm back in private practice. Got a cool little 1960s ranch house that's less than a mile from where the center was. Found this awesome landlord that runs this old tool company. He's run since the 70s, and this used to be an auto broker dealership. But I'm in my wife's office now. I got a little office. I'm playing guitar in between sessions. I'm doing breath work and yoga in the mornings. I feel here and present, and eternal strength in many ways, man. It taught me so much, brother. Like, I'm deeply grateful for every family. I'm deeply grateful for everybody that ever come up there, that worked there, that was part of staff, mentors, therapists. But it was a hell of a ride. It was a wild ride. And it, you know, kind of showed me what I don't want in certain ways. And so I feel very good to be on my own and not have a giant payroll and not have a huge team, and be able to be back in doing the work that I love doing. And with the plant medicine work, it's been interesting because I've been able to kind of do some preparation and integration for those who are on that journey. And I feel very called to help with that. For a long time, Adam, I never spoke about it. My work with ayahuasca in Peru, it felt, you know, I work with a lot of kids, man, work with a lot of youth. And so, you know, spend time and they want to idolize you in certain ways or put you in the bed. And they're like, I need to get face tattoos and do ayahuasca like Dr. Wes. And I'm like, I'm grateful that my plant medicine work all came into my life after I was 35. I'd done quite a bit of my own substance abuse, 17 to 23, you know, cannabis, really enmeshed abusive, cocaine, methamphetamine, 3 arrests. Came away from it when I was 25. And then, you know, it was only in my early 30s when I was studying consciousness and healing that ayahuasca showed up. And I feel deeply grateful for the plant medicines and how they've helped me. But I don't think they're for everybody. And I also don't think it's a panacea or the end all be all. I like to say all the time that I've met hundreds of people who have done tons of plant medicine and psychedelics and haven't integrated and are struggling immensely. And then I've met tons of people who haven't done any psychedelics and any plant medicine work and done tons of spiritual growth and holistic work and are integrating beautifully. And so I think I like to describe it, they can do some surgery, but they can't do any of the PT. They can never do the work for you, but it can reveal certain things to you should you choose to do the work. So I know it was a long ramble. You got to shut me up.
No, I mean, that's beautiful. It's beautiful, man. I got chills listening to you, and I feel like my own experience has mirrored your own in a lot of ways, from when I was with you at Eternal Strength to now, like the journey of recognizing when my psychology is identifying with the actions and the material in my own life, and then recognizing that rub and having to wake up to smelling salts again and again in the form of pain, again and again, shortness of breath, tension, anxiety, fear. It's like these are the signals that tell me I'm off the beam and I'm in my own way, so to say. So I could relate. I feel like my journey since we last saw each other, or since we were working together, has been very similar. I wanted to ask you, the thing that came to mind was, I mean, I've been out of the therapeutic community for so long now, and one of the things that I've really always admired about you that you carry is your willingness to be transparent and authentic with with who you are, like not as a therapist, not as a doctor, not as a counselor or a guide or anything, but like I've known your story since I've known you. Like I knew about the drugs in the past. I knew about you carry yourself openly, and I'm just curious, does the therapeutic or psychological community have many people like you that are willing to be honest and transparent about their own path? Or is there a professional schism? Is that a real thing? I don't actually know. Because
Yeah,
it's refreshing to hear from you, like that you have actual experience with things that your clients may currently be going through, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, thank you for naming it. But like, dude, I've tried to not be authentic. It just doesn't work good for me. Like I feel massively incongruent. And so I'm like, I gotta be open about where I'm at and what's on my journey. And from a therapeutic standpoint, I'm so Rogerian, Carl Rogers, humanistic therapy, relational, that piece of like Carl Rogers talks about it. He's like, you know, in humanistic and person-centered counseling, it's like, can you be authentic? Can you be authentically yourself, not as a doctor, not as a clinician, but as one human being to another human being? And so I think the schism you talk about is real, where there's definitely a professional demeanor or what's seen as the role you should play as a clinician, whether you're an LPC, LMFT, LCSW. I remember when I first, I had some tattoos. I had nowhere near as many as right now, but I had some on my arms. Like my arms were pretty much covered. And it was right when I got my LPC in 2014. And I went into private practice and I did my first website. And dude, you can still find the picture online if you go look it up, but it's like literally I took the picture at my house. I have a sweater vest on and all my tattoos are covered and I'm like turning like this. And I remember at the time being like, this is real deal. I'm a licensed professional counselor now, Adam. I have a website. I need to be incredibly professional. I cannot be unkempt. I need to play this persona. You know, and then once I got into private practice and I started working with so many young people, they were so much more receptive when I was fully myself. They can sniff out bullshit. So if I was sitting there playing any type of role, it wouldn't go anywhere. But as soon as I'd open up about like, dude, they'd play me some music and I'd be like, that sucks, bro. I hate that shit. Let me show you what I like. And then I'd play some music and they'd be like, whoa. And then we'd start like being real with each other and getting past the bullshit. And that had a lot to do with freeing me up to go, wait a minute. I think what's going to serve my clients best is if I'm fully myself. And, you know, I want to grow a big beard. I'm going to grow a big beard. I want to get a lot more tattoos. I'm going to do it. And everything I started to do that was an authentic expression of how I wanted to be in the world, even though I believe what Jim Carrey says, where it's like, it's all form, it's all silly. Whatever you do with this vessel, you know, we're all just playing with stuff. It's not truth. It's not essence self. But it's still just, the more I could be me and breathe and not be performing, the better it felt. And so I just kept doing that. And I meet a lot of beautiful clinicians that I feel like are doing that, but then there is a lot of performance. There's definitely a lot of social mask being worn under a clinical guise or like, you know, here's how I have to be with my clients because I'm the therapist and they're the client. And so for me, it just became more humanistic, more relational. And, you know, I'll notice it in myself. Like even with the plant medicine stuff, I was like, no, bro, I don't know if I should talk about this. There's going to be a lot of like judgment and critique. And how's that going to influence people and how they see me and what they may think and how they may judge. But every time that shit starts to come up, Adam, I notice it. And I'm like, I got to just not give it too much voice because it's almost like when I make music. If I'm making it for me and I believe in it, I'm cruising. As soon as I start to think about the perception from the social other, and whether they'll resonate or not, or what they may think or like, I'll get lost and it'll become inauthentic in a certain way. And so I kind of trust in God and spirit that I'm just going to speak my truth and be me and let it land where it. And then the other thing I love to think of, dude, is I tell clients this all the time. I don't care who you are and what you do in this world. You are going to get 3 different reactions. You're either going to get people that go, I love that. That's amazing. And that's incredible. And that's really good. Or you're going to get, I hate that. I think that's so stupid. And I think it's the worst and awful thing. Or you're going to get, I didn't even notice that. And I don't really give a shit. And if you write a book, if you make music, if you have a practice, if you go do a podcast, every single time, those are the 3 reactions that are coming. You're going to get praised. Yeah, you're going to get praised. You're going to get dogged out, and somebody's going to attack you, and then you're going to get somebody who goes, "Never even saw it, man. Didn't even notice."
So I would like to talk to you a little bit about your draw towards radical youth work. And so when you opened up Eternal Strength, and it was for ages, I don't know how early you went. 8, 9, was that the youngest you would work with?
Yeah, we had some younger like that, but we always said 10 to 25.
10 to 25. So yeah, how come that is, and is that who you're currently serving now, or is your practice widened?
So yeah, my practice has changed quite a bit. I will still see young people. I have probably a handful of clients that are maybe 12, 13, 14. That's pretty much youngest. A ton of clients that are 18 to 25. A lot of emerging young adult. And then I have a lot of clients that are adults. And I still do a lot of family work, still do a lot of parent work. And then with some of the interest in plant medicine work, I have a lot of clients that are drawn to work with me because of my knowledge of entheogens, plant medicines, preparation, integration for those types of journeys. So I'm doing more of that. But my draw to radical youth work, it was so synchronistic. I knew when I went through the stuff I went through from 17 to 23, that's what I wanted to help. It was kind of like I've been through this, my own dark night of the soul. I want to be there for others as they walk that path and walk alongside them through their most difficult times. Now, when I opened the center and had my private practice back in the day, I just started to see more and more adolescents. And so I'd see a lot of 12, 13, 14, 15. And then when I opened the doors of Eternal Strength, I just want to serve young people on what we call the radical pilgrimage of growth. Because the mental health industry, they always like to talk about it as it's either primary mental health, primary addiction, dual diagnoses. They have all these criteria. And what they look at, I'm like, look, if you're young and you're going through your journey of growth, then you're dealing with stuff. And you probably need a community, a sacred space, mentorship, and everybody could benefit from therapy if you connect with it. And so that's what the center was any young person on their journey of growth. We see you, we see your heart. You're not broken, you're not sick, you're not damaged. This is a place where we want you to express yourself, art, music. And, up at my office now, I still have a lot of that, man. I have a ton of guitars. I have all these vinyl records, got a little drum kit, got all this music and art stuff that I weave in. We got an outdoor space. I got a little fire pit. And so I do a lot of that work. And radical youth work, the term specifically came from a lot of research that had been done by Dr. Hans Scott Meyer and his wife, Dr. Kathy Scott Meyer. And Hans is out at Kennesaw State University in their child and youth services department, and he's brilliant. And Kathy, his wife, is the head of the psychology department out at the University of West Georgia, where I did my PhD. It was really unique. Consciousness, society, humanistic, transpersonal, critical psychologies. But they were researching radical youth work for years. I did my dissertation work on addiction. And then what had happened was in my private practice before the center, that's who was just starting to flock to see me. Is I was just getting calls from families that were like, hey, they say you're the guy. I got a 17-year-old kid. I got a 15-year-old kid. I got a 13-year-old kid. They've been to 4 different therapists. They've struggled with this. They're not willing to do anything. They're resistant. And then they'd come in and meet with me in my office. I'd do my weird, let me just be myself. What YouTubes do you like? What shows are you watching right now? You want to play a game of pool? Let's play darts. Have you ever played Ultimate Chicken Horse? We'd start doing that. And then parents would call me in tears, man, and be like, I don't know what you did, but my kid wants to come see you next Wednesday. And I'd be like, awesome. He was really cool and I want to meet with him again. And so I kept doing that. And then the youth just changed my heart, man. That's what made me go open the center, dude. It wasn't money. It wasn't trying to build. It wasn't a business opportunity. Dude, I had $11,000, bro, in 2020. And I was like, I'm going to go open this center. And I found that 8,500 square foot space and I just went in. And the thing I'm the most proud of is we opened a little nonprofit leg called Cosmic Lamb that I have tattooed on my head. And we raised over $400,000 over those 5 years. And we were able to scholarship countless numbers of young people and families that would have never gotten therapeutic care any other way. And so we did some really cool stuff and built some awesome community. And yeah, radical youth work is a methodology I care about deeply. And it basically is looking at how can we join with youth in a way that youth is not necessarily an age, but more of a spirit. And it is a mutually collaborative liberation. And so, this isn't trying to tell young people how to be or telling them that we know who they are. It's joining with them on the journey of existence and life and learning from one another and helping them express themselves as they go on their journey. And so it's got all these, I do presentations on it and can go in depth and get all heady and theoretical and where it pulls from. But at the core of it, that's the heart of it.
So I remember when I first walked into the space, the Eternal Strength, and at the time I'd been developing my app and I'd written out all my theories and I'd discovered Rogers and Jung and Abraham Maslow, and I'd been working at Ridgeview, the psych unit, and I was attempting to understand my own psychology and what other people were experiencing. And I had a head full of ideas, I had a head full of theories, and I had my own experience. And I walk into Eternal Strength, and it felt like, to the core of my being, this is the dream that I would have created if I had the tools to create it, for the philosophy that is germinating in my own brain. And then I spoke with you, and you were able to use your language and your expertise to describe exactly what I saw wrong with our culture, our society, and the way that we handled mental health care. And it was actualized in the form of this center. And I'm seeing the paintings and the pictures on the wall, and I turn a corner and then I see like the whole game room with the chill lights and the bean bags and then the music room. And it was like, this is everything that I could have ever possibly imagined for what I think could be helpful for someone struggling with themselves, struggling with growing up, struggling with making the right decisions or making sense of life or what my goals should be or how I should move and who I should be. It was like, this is the place. And you didn't use there was no diagnoses there. There was no labeling there. And I guess I'd like to hear a little bit about, like, it felt like your consciousness itself. And I felt like I was a representation of it at the time. Like I'm sitting there with Zach and you, but I always felt like you were in a space where if you thought it, it would happen. It felt like magic.
Yeah.
And I can see why that eventually collapsed on itself, because that's real ultimate power without a level of detachment. You know what I mean? Like so I'd like to hear kind of like more about your experience going through it. What caused, like, I'm curious about moving from private to insurance based. I'm sure that must have been ghastly for you. And then I'm also curious about what happened between you and Zach. And then maybe start with the beginning, where it was like, when I first entered the scene, I don't know if you guys had been open yet, but Erica was there, and it might have just been you three. But when did it start to go from magical mystery tour to I'm starting to get stressed?
Dude, yeah, I mean, man, first I'll back up and just say thank you for saying those things about it, because it'll make me cry. You know, it was so beautiful, man. And it was something that is, even though I may have been at the forefront and a large part of like birthing it, the cool thing is it was shaping and becoming something collectively. And especially with the young people that came in to do work there, we would really help. Like, we would really be like, look, we don't want to do a big community thing unless you guys want to do it. What do you all want to do? We wanted to make it part of them, and it was collaborative. So the whole time is like all that beautiful art that you saw and the rooms changing how they did. A lot of that, we set it up at first and we were like, cool, we'll have a music room, we'll have this. And then as the young people started coming, they were like, nah, man, let's change it to this. And we could do this and we can add this. And so I really got to give them voice in anything cool that Eternal Strength ever did was built by community. And yeah, it did. It felt like a whirlwind that time during COVID, because I pretty much shut down my private practice. I let everybody know. I was serving like 50 plus families. And I was like, look, I'm going to go open this youth center. And right when we did, a lot of the private practice families followed over there. And we started to just create these different kind of engagements where you could come up and do mentoring. You could do therapy. We had a run club at one point. We had fitness stuff, nutrition. We had like an anime club. Mike Fredrickson, one of the dudes that used to work up at the center, amazing mentor and incredible. He started a Dungeons and Dragons night, and that became so popular, dude. It was like literally 20 plus young people coming and doing that. And then, so it was beautiful, but also my ego was in it in a big way, man, where I was like, I don't say it like, pop psychology ego, like Donald Trump, Kanye West, pompous, narcissistic. I don't mean like that, but I definitely mean in my identity. And I was like, okay, I'm Dr. West now of Eternal Strength. And what does this mean? And what does this need to look like? And what was really hard for me was being the center of attention. I'm good at it. One part of my persona really likes it and feeds off of it, but it also becomes daunting for me because I really want to show up for everyone. And so once we started having these events where there'd be like 100 people, man, and I was like the center of attention, and it was like everybody wants to talk to Dr. West and like learn about, it totally stretched me too thin. And I was trying to show up for everybody and give like one-on-one attention, and I couldn't manage that. And then, you reference Zach, it's like, so a lot of interpersonal dynamics happened with me and him, but then also with staff. And I'll be the first to admit, Adam, I wasn't a good manager. I'm a therapist, and that's what I've done for 7 years. And when we built the center, it was like, okay, I brought on people that I trusted, that I had some communication skills with and felt comfortable with. It was really a comfort thing. It was like, I feel really comfortable and I can be honest and, talk to these people. So I brought in a couple past clients that I hadn't worked with in like over 8 to 10 years. So they were clients much long time ago. And I don't think I'd repeat some of this, man. I learned a lot of lessons, but they were interested in what I was doing. We were still in contact. I was like, look, I'm building this center. You want to come and help out? And we kind of built this crew of people early on. So there was 4 of us to begin with, and then it just grew organically. And some people would be like, oh, I got a friend who's doing this over here. Come meet them. And so that's where I'd known Erica for years. She knew my dream and kind of the early seeds of building it. And I was like, hey, you want to come here? We're starting to do it. She had a really good close friend, Morgan. She came on board. And then before I know it, man, we had a staff of 17. And I was the boss. And I was, figuring out everybody's salary and whether or not their contract and all those things I wasn't super well versed in. And so I was trying to figure out people's title, what to pay people, how we were going to run as an organization. And I was very lucky because I found some business mentors, and these were dads who their kids have come up to the center, or I had worked with their kids in private practice. And these are the real deal. Like, some people will be like, I'm a businessman, and the whole hip hop community is like, I'm a businessman. Like, no, dude, these guys were serial entrepreneurs, knew what they were doing, have run several different businesses, knew every aspect of it, and they came and gave me great advice. But I'm a rebel. And so they give me advice, and they'd be like, Wes, you got to remember it's a business, and you got to do SEO and marketing and this and that. And people don't understand what you do, and it's too out there and this. And I'd be like, fuck that, man. I'd be like, we're doing it rock and roll. It's got to be like this. And such my grip on if the kids don't think it's cool, I don't give a shit whether it succeeds or not. If the kids don't, you know what I mean? It was on that punk rock, dude. It was on Homeboy from the Sex Pistols, just being it's only cool if it's punk, dude. And so some of that was showing up in my energy in a big way. And then I think just the pressure, just so much pressure. And so it hit a boiling point with Zach and I. Our communication was good, but I was growing and I had concerns. We were starting to get a lot of, garner a lot of attention from people that were famous. And, the band Collective Soul started to support us and had us for, and then at one point I was meeting, this was, I think, after Zach left, but Alice Cooper, I got to connect with him. And then next thing you know, we were in talks to talk from one of the guys from Korn. And every time, dude, that this was happening, Adam, I was like, this is it. This is it, dude. Here we go. I don't know what my life's going to look like after this, but it's about to explode. You know what I mean? It was this weird, it's about to explode. And I don't know where I'll be. And meanwhile, I'm just so stressed, constantly future tripping, trying to stay grounded. But yeah, with Zach and I, man, I think we were meant to come into each other's lives for certain periods of time. So back in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, it's we connected and we were super close. Then we drifted apart again for all these years. And then, dude, we came back and connected for exactly the same amount of time.
Wow.
For 2.5 years. And then it hit a place where he was amazing, and he would play whatever role there could be. But I think he was starting to have challenges, and I was starting to grow in a different way. And we got to a place where we just couldn't make our communication work. And I felt like I wasn't being heard. And I tried to deliver some information to him where I felt like he completely threw me under the bus in one of our team meetings. And it made the team start to look at me in a certain way and question whether they had trust with me. And I was like, this is not okay. And he was like, I don't see the same problems that you see. And so I was like, I can't work with you anymore, brother. And it was pretty intense, man. I remember the day it happened. I wrote up this huge letter to him, and he was riding a motorcycle at the time. And we met up at this coffee shop, and I was like, dude, I can't do this. And he just rode off on the motorcycle. And that's the last time we talked, man. And you know, what's weird, Adam, is there was a time where we'd work out a lot in the mornings. We'd get up at the center early because we were putting in 12-hour days sometimes. And, at one time we were working out, and I was always really emotional, dude. I wear my heart on my sleeve. And so I get emotional, and I talk to him a lot. At times I'd break down crying and be like, dude, I don't give a shit about money. I don't care about scaling. I just want to take care of my daughters and my wife. And that's what's most important to me. And he was always good at listening, man. But at one point I said, dude, I'm just worried, man. I'm worried that we're going to have a huge falling out and not be in each other's lives. And he was like, you don't know what you're talking about, dude. Shut up. Don't worry about it. And I think it was some foreshadowing that kind of I knew intuitively, but I don't wish any ill will, man. I truly, truly believe in my heart we taught one another lessons that we would have not garnered with any other relationship, and we were meant to come back into each other's lives. And if I understand correctly, he actually connected with somebody that I introduced him to, Brad Baker, and they run an organization called Open Heart Media and do a ton of social media for all different types of, not just mental health programs, but anybody that needs social media stuff. And he's so gifted in so many different ways with all of that. But it was hard. It was like losing a really good friend and a brother. But at the same time, we were somewhat, I don't want to say toxic with each other, but like I said, dude, we turned 13 again. Like, you know what I mean? We just get with each other, and it was beautiful, and it was manifesting a lot. But ultimately, and then dude, a lot of different challenges with staff. There's several staff that were part of the center that I don't have relationship with and don't talk to now.
I'm curious about that because I sensed it while I was there, and I would be curious to hear what some of your business mentors would say about this, because I'm not quite sure what it is. Groups of people establish hierarchy. There's role structures and things that happen, and I'm curious, like, what was that like? I mean, you had Zach there for that process, so I would imagine it was a little easier having a hierarchy, but then it must be destabilizing when things are a certain way and then all of a sudden they're not that way for everybody that's involved in the collective.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think I was trying to do as much collaborative work as I could without recognizing the vital importance of hierarchy in a business organization. And that was part of what, at one point, man, I was over here thinking this would be better if we were just a co-op and leadership was just spread across the board and everybody owned a percentage of this thing. And we all just viewed it as a social community, but I get weird with stuff like that. I'm like, well, then we just need to do that with the families too. They don't even need to pay us. It just needs to be this weird.
That's the way I've looked at things most of my life until very recently, because there's a difference. I mean, I guess what I'm, yeah, there's that when you're running a business is different. I don't know. It's hard to put the words to it, but I've had to learn to be more assertive and direct and have stronger boundaries in the realm of business that I never, and in effect, it has actually helped my personal life too, that they've now kind of integrated themselves, and I've integrated with it. And it's been a very beneficial thing, just because I have the high trait openness, so high. So my work is always about, like, practically speaking, and trying to look at things objectively more so than subjectively. But as someone who leads with their heart and wants everyone to be part of the big, be part of the whole project. But it's like, it's a paradox, because you are in control, but you want everybody to know it's ours. But at the end of the day, it's your thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it felt, I don't think I'm meant to do it, man. I just, like the word business, I'm just not down. I don't know any other way to say it. And dude, some people could say, well, your private practice is a business. And I'm like, yeah, but I feel cool running that, because look, here's my standard rate. I'm this much an hour. I have some sliding scale. I never want finances to be a barrier, but you can hire and fire my ass on a dime. You could have one session. You could have 1 million sessions. We could do once a month, every week, every other week. You could start one way, stop another. There's a lot of creative flexibility, and it feels good being rogue and being on my own. And that's what I knew. And I never felt lonely in private practice. I wasn't one of these clinicians that was like, I'm so lonely. And I'm on my own, and I loved it, dude. The reason I built the center is because for 6 years, families kept coming to me and telling me the same thing. And then I'd have a day with 6 clients, and 3 of them needed to meet each other. They all liked freaking Elden Ring or something that was like the glue. And so I was like, what they need is community. What they need is this. And so I did it for the kids, dude. I was like, and I told them, we'd be in session. I'd be like, I'm thinking about building this place, dude. And it would have a gym. It would have this. What else should be there? And they'd be like, dude, it should have a skate ramp. And I'd be like, yes, skate ramp in the back, dude.
Yeah, it's you plugged in on something that I saw coming up in 12 step in my recovery. I saw that there's no authorities in the recovery community, that everybody is in the process of examining themselves, and that everybody's in relationship with one another along the path of their own journey. And that's what you were speaking to. And I think that's what you saw was and I think I remember you saying this, but the way I interpret it was, I just need to create the environment. We have the answers within us and between us. So we'll all discover them together. We'll go along together. And I thought that was genius, because that's why I think the 12-step thing worked. And anytime somebody thinks they know, it's almost like you've put yourself at a disadvantage because there's so much we don't know.
Yeah. Yep. And some of my favorite, theorists and philosophers, there's a gentleman by the name of Felix Guattari, Deleuze and Guattari. It was Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. Gilles Deleuze was a philosopher, studied a lot of Spinoza's work, and did a lot with difference and repetition, but did some beautiful work with immanence. And he paired up with Felix Guattari, who was a psychoanalyst who had actually worked under Jacques Lacan and done psychoanalytic work with him. And he ran a center at one point, Felix Guattari did, where everybody, the staff and the clients, were all on the same. They cooked together. They engaged the same way. And many people that would come in there couldn't differentiate between who was the client and who was staff. And they started to talk about a lot of the therapeutic healing happened in between sessions, when they'd be cleaning together or cooking or moving things. And we saw a lot of that at the center too. I think it was just, it just taught me. It taught me so much about myself, about human existence, about what I want for my future, Adam, and about what the real gift was. I had this profound moment where I'd gone in one morning and I had worked out and I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, and I was in the shower and I had my phone playing one of his videos, and it was like, just remember, the most enlightened person is the person who remains the most present in their lives. And I dropped the soap, dude. I was like, what I was like, oh my God, I have not been present in my life in the last however many years, probably more than 30%. I've been future tripping the whole time. When I'm sitting with a client, I was thinking about, the big community event we got to run. When I'm at the big community event, I'm thinking about the next business meeting that I have. When I'm thinking about bringing on this new staff, I'm thinking about this other staff that's exiting out. Like I was pulled in every different direction, and especially the level of me being present at home with my wife, with my daughters. It's like I come home and be with them, but I was constantly thinking about eternal strength, constantly thinking about the families we were serving and what we needed to do more and how we needed to grow. And so once I got that message, dude, where I was like, I need to be present in my life again and take care of myself, it really helped me kind of reground. And so, like I said, I'm so grateful for it. I'm proud of the 5.5 years that it stayed up and running, and everybody that was a part of it was awesome in every way. And who knows, man, I still believe in radical youth work. I still believe in a lot of what we did in community. I would love to be a part of helping other organizations implement that and train and teach, or to be on a board with any organization that's trying to kind of grow radical youth work and do that. But in terms of fronting the bill and doing it myself again.
Yeah, man.
Nah,
Yeah,
dude, I'm good.
much better to be. I've noticed this with my own work. It's way more. It's way easier for me to be helpful to other people's work than the own work that I'm subjectively creating. And then this brings me into what I wanted to ask you about with Eckhart Tolle, your meditative practice, presence. I just want to throw this out here. I want to see how you'll take this, and I want to know what you think about it. So I don't know how familiar you are with non-duality, but
Yeah.
are you familiar with it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so how do you experience yourself? Do you believe that Wes is like how do I want to ask this? I'll speak for me. So as I move, live, and experience life, I'm mostly am in a space of seeing. So I see that like this is going to get trippy, but I see my hands emerging from nowhere. I see your face in the window I'm looking at behind this. It's all just appearances. But there's this thing that's always been here since I've been awake or aware as a conscious entity, and I would call it the screen or the film through which experience occurs. And it seems to be that I experience a meditative state. I go into that seeing and I enter into my life, and then I go into the seeing and then I enter into my life, and it's that back and forth liveliness that seems to be creating me or this. And I just want to know what your thoughts are on that, and also like how is your practice in presence for yourself?
Yeah. Dude, beautiful, beautiful question. And for those, I think anybody that's listening to your work hopefully has a decent, understanding of non-duality. Basically, this conceptual framework that says there is no subject and object, and that duality, first of all, duality is in language. So we're using this tool, talking to each other right now, that is just wrought with duality, the separation. There's me, and then there's something outside of me. Luckily, because of my study and my journey in the PhD program, consciousness, society, we looked at Spinoza a lot, Baruch Spinoza and his work on immanence, which was this idea that there is nothing transcendent. There's nothing outside of you. Everything is within. You are connected to everything. Somebody else's work who I really love is Nora Bateson. Her father was Gregory Bateson. He was an ecologist, anthropologist, psychologist, but he wrote a book called Ecologies of the Mind. And Nora Bateson's work pulls from her father. And actually interesting, Gregory Bateson's father, Nora Bateson's grandfather, coined the term genetics. So really cool lineage, but she talks about something called trans-contextuality. And when something is trans-contextual, it's different than multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinary would be like there's all these things that are separate that can talk and communicate with one another. Trans-contextual is there is no separation. That's something that we create in our minds and believe exist, but that is not how the world works. And something that Gregory Bateson says, he says the problems in the world lie in the difference between how man thinks and how nature works. So to pull it back to your question, I feel like intellectually, abstractly, conceptually, I give myself 100 out of 100 with non-dual. Experientially, phenomenologically, I'm probably hitting a 30%. So
What do you mean? How do you mean with the numbers?
basically, like I can read about non-duality. I can understand it. I can even begin to practice it a little bit, but I don't know if I'm really living it. I think my ego identity is still pretty strong. And so every day for me is having to kind of undo my ego thought system.
Oh, okay. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, and join more with the true state, which I believe in my heart is non-dual. is transcontextual, is everything is one. It is all connected. There is nothing outside. Everything is birthing from this immanent place. And for me, I think I just got a huge ego, dude. Like identity is a big thing for me. And so it takes me a while to repeat the mantra of I'm not my thoughts.
Oh, okay.
I'm not my emotions. I'm not my mind. I really have to put a lot of work, it feels like, into that. But once I get into that, it starts to open more and I can get to those experiences that you're describing where I don't think I'm Wes Robins.
Right.
I
Right.
don't.
It takes you work to get to that space, basically, is what you're saying.
And I feel like it's part of my evolution, if you want to call it that. But it's like when Jim Carrey talks about it, and he starts to speak about, he's like, not only the characters I played in the movie are a character, but Jim Carrey was also a character.
Yeah.
It's like, 100%. You have this profound moment of like, wait a minute, I am an amalgamation of thoughts, emotions, and experiences that are calling themselves Dr. Wes Robins. But if I really peel the layers of identity, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my experiences. I am the ever flowing, ever present, I am consciousness experiencing itself.
As Dr. Wes.
And then yes, and then I'll hit that, but I'll come back to there's something strong enough in me that goes, yeah, but cool, but I'm Dr. Wes.
Well, I mean, I think it's both. I think the non-dual experience is a great experience. It's a great place to have access to, but it's not the end of the story.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you know, I think that's where Eckhart Tolle's presence work has been so deeply impactful, because he flips everything on its head and he goes, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to achieve. You're not trying to get anywhere. You know, he always says, like, you know, somebody who's like, I'm trying to make it or arrive or work towards something. He's like, well, he laughs, he giggles. He's like, what is that? And it's so presence for me and his work has been, I am a divine spirit, and that is my essence self. And then there's my ego identity. But when I can sit in presence and I cannot get caught up in the monkey mind and I can observe it and experience it, then I can feel spirit and commune with spirit in a way that it's probably always there, but it's like me tuning into a radio frequency or a radio station and being like, okay, and that's a practice for me. So the more I do that, in conjunction with Course in Miracles, which is a very trippy, metaphysical, you're working on the entire time undoing your ego thought system and not getting angry at your ego and not getting frustrated with it, but slowly but surely just unwinding it and joining with spirit. And that's where I love to say, I think however many of us there are, 8 billion, something like that, right? Everybody is a radiant spirit child of God. Amazing, beautiful, incredible soul and spirit. And everybody's got an ego, and everybody has consciousness and divine spirit. And usually, if you're tuning into ego, you're projecting, you're forgetting who you are, you're forgetting you're a radiant child of God, you're forgetting that you are spirit, that you are consciousness, that you are divinely connected to everything in the universe, and you are the universe experiencing itself. And you're harming yourself and you're harming others because of that separateness and what you are deluding yourself or hallucinating to believe. But you can choose with your decision-making mind to become aware when you have chosen ego and choose again, my brother. And you can choose spirit. That's what it said. Choose again, my brother. And that's where I think for me, Jesus, spirit, the Holy Spirit, oneness, love, God, you know, putting my hand out and grabbing onto that and holding on to that and kind of choosing that. And when I do that, I don't see separateness. I think I am, you know, I am God and so is everyone else. And we all just got to remember it. And anything I do to another, I'm simultaneously doing to myself. And everything is just a mirror for my own growth. And the more I can grow, I can offer it to others, but there is no separation.
Have you been able, since you were able to move, close Eternal Strength and move into your private practice, have you been able to see the mechanics at play in your own psychology that brought you to that place of intense stress and discontent?
Yeah, in a big way. I think it from a psychoanalytic standpoint, it's a lot of worth, needing to be seen, needing to do something amazing, needing to change the world, needing to make a massive impact. The more insidious shadow parts of it are needing to be seen as the savior, bit of a savior complex, like, oh, have you seen what Dr. West did and what he created? And he's, you know, so all of those elements. But then, you know, in a deeper kind of metaphysical way, it's just been not being able to just be content with flowing. And you know, I'm always attaching my ego and identity and worth to what I have created or what I've done, rather than just being able to inherently be worthy. And, you know, whether you work at the grocery store or a fruit stand or you're an Uber driver, you know, there's something with my ego identity that's like, nope, got to be Dr. West, got to write the book, got to do the you know, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I believe what Ram Dass says, man, where it's like we're all just walking each other home. And you know, I work on myself to help others, and I help others to work on myself, but I can't do anybody else's work. I can just do my own. What Eckhart Tolle says is in a new earth. You know, he says the only reason you're here, and the only thing that you're doing is elevating your consciousness. And when you do that, you're doing it for the whole, for what A Course in Miracles calls the sonship. You know, you're a part of it, and you just got to work on your part of the sonship. And when you do that, you're doing it for everybody.
How far were you able to get in the Course in Miracles?
Dude, I'm deep. So I've studied it for 5+ years now. And at first it's, you know, it's heavy because it uses a lot of Christian mysticism kind of language. And there's the workbook and the manual. But then I had the most beautiful experience of this woman, Risha, who's the intuitive reader. Her husband, Ralston, he was in his mid-80s, and he had studied the Course for 20+ years. And we started to study together every morning. And we did that for 6 months before he passed away. Wow. And we would hop on, dude, and I never met him in person. We just got on the phone and we'd study the Course together every single day. We would read it line by line, back and forth to one another. And so right now I'm right where he passed away about 2 months ago. And he was beautiful, amazing. And I still feel his spirit. Feel like he's right there, you know, as a spirit guide kind of watching over me. But I'm right where we left off. So today I make these little dog tags that has the Course practice. I just bought a bunch of cheap dog tags and you can write on them. Yeah. And so today's lesson that I'm on is 116. And it says, God's will for me is perfect happiness. I share God's will for happiness with me. And that's kind of, each day has a practice, and then you go back and read the manual, which is beautiful. And for any psychotherapist or clinicians out there, as I've grown in my work, it's got a little manual for psychotherapy in the back. And it's what I believe with my full heart. It talks about some pretty heavy metaphysical stuff where it's, much less about methodology and much more about anytime two people come together and work on healing, God is present and they're both learning and both growing, and we're all just teachers of God.
That's great. Yeah, that's been my experience as well. I was able to, I think I got 23 days into it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the exercises, and that's been my experience as well. Is I think the turning point for me was recognizing that my own mind, I'm limited in the ability to create or change any consistent peace or serenity in my own life. My own thoughts, my own ideas, my own beliefs. I was shown it. I cannot create that for myself. Something that's not this is what's doing it.
Yeah, I can vibe on that big time, man. And I think you'd love somebody that was really helpful for me. One of the teachers of the course, Kenneth Wapnick. He taught it for years, and he's got stuff on YouTube. He's amazing. Anything Kenneth Wapnick does is awesome. But he says at one point, he says, "Don't take it so serious." He's like, the whole point. Don't even being a Course in Miracles student. He's like, quit that shit. Quit taking it so serious and becoming neurotic, and it's a ritual. And if you don't do it right, and blah blah blah. He says what the Course is teaching, all it is, forgiveness and grace. And recognition, man, as forgiving yourself over and over again for when you slip back into ego and you project. And all you got to do is catch it. And he says, don't talk nasty to yourself. He said, talk crap to God before you talk shit to yourself. He's like, you just need to forgive yourself, have grace, and then ask for spirit to come in and take the wheel. And it's like, man, what a lesson, Adam. You know, in life where we're running around. One of my favorite shirts that I got has this girl on the front, and she's got these glasses on with these smiley faces in her glasses. She's smoking a cigarette, and it says, "Relax, nothing's under control."
Yeah, that's what it is.
Dude, it's one of my favorites because it's like we run around acting as if we're controlling anything. And it's like we are, you know, in certain ways, but dude, there's something so much bigger at play in the universe, spirit, you know.
Have you ever tried to do nothing? Have you ever tried to really do nothing? Impossible. It's not possible.
Seriously.
Have you ever tried to stop thinking? That's not, trying to stop thinking is not meditation because it can't be done.
I know, man.
Man, well, this is great. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from this. If somebody's listening or watching and they want to connect with you, is that possible?
Yeah. So I got a website. It's docwest.com, docwes.com. And then my email is on there, but it's still, I kept my old email, man. It's drwes@eternalstrength.com. Dr. Wes at eternalstrength.com. Got that going. And then maybe you can put a link to my YouTube. I'm doing a podcast now called Conversation. Yeah. Well, you inspired me a lot, man. I was like, dude, Adam's still doing Inside the Mind's Eye. Let's go. You know, and the thing, you got to do stuff that you're passionate about. And so as soon as I'm not passionate about it, I'm like, I can't do this. It feels inauthentic. But I've had some passion to get the podcast back up. So I'm calling it Conversations with Dr. Wes. It's on YouTube at Dr. Wes Robins, Robins. And I'm having on some awesome guests, man, that I'm really excited about, that I'm just going for it and reaching out to, and they've been willing to come on. So I just did an incredible one with Dr. Stacy Simmons, who wrote a book called Mushroom Pharmacy, talking about psychedelic assisted psychotherapy and her journey. And then, yeah, going to have a couple people that study A Course in Miracles come on and just keep moving and grooving, dude.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, then I'm looking forward to watching that unfold too. I didn't know you had your own channel up. And yeah, this is great.
Dude,
Well,
And Adam, I'm so grateful for you. Like I said, me reaching out and being like, hey, dude, can I come on as a guest? Because you have created a platform and a space where consciousness, philosophy, psychology, existence, human behavior, all of it is included. And so I was like, man, if there's one place I can go and literally talk about Eckhart Tolle and A Course in Miracles and plant medicine work and suffering and my journey and psychology, I was like, I'm gonna be able to talk about all of it, and he's not gonna be like, hey, this isn't appropriate for my channel.
Oh yeah, no, this is what it's about. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out like how to, I guess, how to label it, but it's all the things that I'm interested in. Everything you just described. How to well-being, like how do we establish well-being for ourselves?
Yeah,
That's pretty much it.
yeah,
I went through a good bit of suffering, and I feel like it was a lot of it was unnecessary. So my hope, I know it's not possible, but it's a hope I carry, is that through something that we're doing could be helpful to someone, that they wouldn't have to experience more pain than necessary.
agreed. And I think, the more we are honest and vocal, like you said, even if we can't take away somebody's suffering, because I like how Ram Dass talked about it. He said, you're under no moral obligation to take away somebody else's suffering. I was like, okay. But to know you're not alone, and to know that suffering isn't all dark, and no matter what you're enduring and what you're going through, that there is beauty and truth and strength, and you are not your suffering. And I think the way we do that is we share with one another, man. So I'm grateful for you, dude. It's a beautiful platform.
Thanks, man. Well, that's it. We'll close it up. Thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you on the next one. Well, that's it. You made it. Thanks so much for hanging. If you enjoyed this conversation, please, once again, consider liking or subscribing. It really helps out the channel. And yeah, we'll be moving on to the next one. And also, any thoughts you may have, comments, ideas for topics or guests that you think would be interesting, send them my way. And I hope you have a most excellent rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, or good night. Farewell. Jas Snuffit.